Okay, welcome everyone to the season 1 finale of LFTM. I'm sorry for the noise. Or Lessons from the Mundane with yours truly. My name is Jason, or you can call me Jace, your humble host for this event and a fellow believer in living a life of abundance and fulfillment. That's something I've actually taken on the important mission of sharing with you.
What do you mean by that?
I'm kidding. It's Y-O-U, okay? You know how we do it over here. If you've been watching my videos thus far, but if you're new, I'd like to thank you so very much for checking us out and seeing what we're all about over on this channel. I believe you will find something worthwhile that you can apply to your life in transforming yourself into the better version that you deserve. It has been a wild ride. It's been an experience like none other. And for those of you out there who are considering even doing something like this or starting YouTube or putting your voice out there in some way, shape, or form, I encourage you not to hold yourself back with excuses like equipment or timing or, having an audience before you start, which doesn't make much sense. And do what I did after 2 to 3 years of putting it off, which is start. Just get started. All right, just get started, because don't be like me. Don't do the 2 to 3 years of putting it off. That's all right. Anyway, for real, guys, this has been a passion project of mine that's been baking in the oven for, as I mentioned, 2 to 3 plus years. And it took God stopping me one day and asking me straight up, like grabbing my collar and like, when are you gonna do it? And so that's when I had to throw away all excuses to put this out, because I truly desire to speak favor and fulfillment into your life, right? And that comes in the form of showing you just the little things that surround you right now that can help you see yourself in a better light, see the world a better way, change, reframe how you deal with loss and grief, and maximizing the events that come to you. Because those can be regrets. The bad stuff that happened to you can be regrets, or they can be lessons. You can literally live a regret-free life by relabeling and reframing what would normally be called a regret, therefore nullifying that term altogether. So, which life would you like to live? And if these things can help you get to that place that you want to get to, then I'm happy to keep supplying you with as much content as the Lord will allow me to put out. All right, so for this last episode, I hope you'll pay extra attention, because a lot of it is unscripted. What I'm saying right now, it's not on the computer, it's not on the teleprompter, my producer's not whispering in my ear. It's from the heart. It's something that I genuinely want to talk about without pause, without distraction, without cuts and edits. This is just me and you right now. And God, he's around somewhere. So last week, I gave you a sneak peek into the 3 points that I'll be talking about, right? Which are, number 1, keys are primarily for allowing or denying access. Number 2, keys can sometimes be an indication of someone's authority. And finally, number 3, whether you use them or not, the keys you possess also determine some of the responsibilities you bear. Okay, so let's dive right into number 1. Keys are primarily for allowing or denying access. I'm sure you can agree that the main purpose of a key is generally known or understood to be for locking or unlocking doors. But I've already hinted at the specific direction in which I'd like to take this discussion by using such a specific word as access. Again, I wish I could just drop a 20-minute video on this bullet point alone. But please bear with me as I absolutely blaze through this example, okay? It's gonna be fast, so rewind and play it again as many times as you like or as you need to be sure that you catch all the golden nuggets within. Otherwise, you get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir. All right, here goes. 3, 2, 1. Keys, once again, they grant or deny access. I'd like you to picture this with me. Think of a building, your life being represented by a building. You are the janitor of this building. You have keys to every single room. You are responsible for every single room and the state of every single room. Stay with me now. As far as granting or denying access, what does that look like in your own life? With the different rooms that you have a room called relationships. And within that room, you have other rooms called friends, you have family, you have loved ones, or like romantic interests, whatever, business partners, co-workers. There are different rooms for different people. All right, different categories, essentially. And of course, who you grant access to those rooms determines how those rooms end up at the end of the day. Do those people walk in and they respect the space that you've allowed them to come into? Or do they constantly ransack it only to leave you with a huge mess to clean up again and again? And that begs the question, do you keep allowing those people the same level of access when they've clearly shown you that they do not deserve it? Of course, this is not a, cut everyone out of your life sort of sermon. This is a be careful who you allow access sermon. Okay? Because it's very important who you allow to come into those spaces that are the most vulnerable in our lives. Of course, not everybody gets that. Not everybody respects that, right? So it's not just limited to people, though. Think about thoughts. Thoughts can come in and mess you up internally if you let them stay. My dad liked to use this one example or this one quote about birds being like thoughts. You can't stop birds from flying over your head, but you can stop them from nesting on your head, right? So let's talk access. Which brings me to number 2. Keys can sometimes be an indication of one's authority. And for this example, I'd like you to think about it more like a hotel with the key cards. Instead of just a physical, metal key, think a hotel key card. If you're a visitor, your key card is programmed to open just your door. That is the room that you are allowed access to. It can maybe get you into the elevator or into the building, but then aside from that, it's just your room, right? That's where you have access. The word's back again, all right? But if you're the shift manager of that hotel at the time, then of course, your key opens up the common areas and it can open up every other room as well. The staff rooms as well as the guest rooms. Of course, you're not going to try and go into the guest rooms while there are guests in there. You got to be civil about it. But I'm talking about, again, access. Now, let's say you are the owner of this hotel. Do you just give every guest that walks in or that pays you a compliment, do you give them a managerial key? Or do you limit them to the spaces that they are responsible for? It's not just about access. It's also about how long do they stay there? If they're a guest, if they're a visitor, don't be going out of your way to try and keep that person or that thought there by constantly bringing it back, by constantly re-inviting them and showing them summer discounts and getting buy one room, get two for free. And you're giving them space when they are not there for productive reasons. Some people come into your life for a season and they're meant to go in the next season. So this whole thing about, oh, but she's my best friend. Oh, but he's my guy. He's my dog, though. He's my ride or die. Like, sure, but be open to the fact that sometimes based on how you grow and how they grow, it might mean that you're kind of doing this. Does this mean you become enemies? No. Does this mean you can never talk to each other again? No, it doesn't mean any of that. You can be civil about going your own ways. But what I do mean is that you have to go your own way sometimes. It just depends on where you're being called, what you were made for, what you're created for. That opens up a whole new discussion of finding that out. But back to number 2, access. Who do you give the managerial keys and who is just a visitor? Who are those people in your life that you know have your best interest at heart, that care about you, that love you, that will sacrifice their time, their money, their intentionality, their efforts for you? And if they want to, just happen to give you a little bit of advice here and there and step into this room that you've been kind of hiding off to the side because it's not clean yet, or you're ashamed of what's inside, or this specific closet which you've been using to house all of your skeletons. If you know that person to be somebody who's not going to turn around and stab you in the back with gossip or slander, then take a chance and let them walk into that closet. Because if anything, they're in that closet because you can't clean it out yourself. So that's where you need those people, those managers, those good voices, those godly voices in your life to help you through those situations. And it all starts with the keys that you give them. I hope you're starting to get the importance of keys and the difference of keys and the different type of keys. You get what I'm saying. All right, let's move on to our final point, number 3. Whether you use them or not, the keys you possess also determine the responsibilities you bear. In the previous video, I used the example of the difference between a janitor and a principal. They both have sets of keys, but it kind of also plays into the whole hotel analogy or the hotel example, right? To where it's a similar looking key, but you have the authority to walk into different places when you're the manager or you're the principal versus just the janitor or versus just a visitor, right? I hope I'm not confusing you guys too much with these interchangeable examples, but there's so many things that happen that we would rather happen in different ways or at different times or to different people, right? Stuff happens, you're like, why me? There have been times where I've asked myself and I've cried out to God on my knees, like, why me? And of course, if he asked me, well, who would you recommend? I don't know what I'd say. But the thing is, all those events that I cried out, why me for, they took place in my hotel. They took place in my building. They took place in my rooms. And sometimes those events happen because I gave the wrong level of access to the wrong people. Or it can also happen when you give the wrong level of access. Let me say this again. When you give the right level of access to the right people, but at the wrong time, right? There are various combinations we can use, but it all falls under the jurisdiction of the one who's issuing the keys. And that's what I mean by point number 3, that whether you use it or not, sometimes the keys that you hold determine the responsibilities that you bear. Because you have the keys to every single room of your life, what does that mean about your responsibilities? It means you're responsible for every aspect of your life. You may not control everything that happens in those rooms all the time, or you may not control how you got that room, how you inherited some of those rooms. And some of those rooms might be genetic, right? Figure that out, if you will. But it is now, because it is your room, your responsibility to manage it, to take the intentional time to clean it, organize it, field day, what's spring cleaning? You don't have to do it all the time and just be constantly back and forth, just stressing about how every room looks when you're having visitors to one room specifically. It's about understanding, rather than understanding, it's more so about properly using grace in this instance. Because you got to be gracious with yourself as far as all the rooms that you have to manage in your life. It's a lot, guy. I get it. It's a lot. How do you deal with all that? And especially with the coming new year, how do you deal with a whole new year of rooms being added, being demolished, being renovated? It's a lot. But before you can even do anything to it, nothing meaningful can take place if you don't at the first place, or if you don't in the first place take responsibility for it. If you're always blaming somebody else for your breakups, you're not claiming responsibility for that room. If you're in deep debt and nobody else was swiping your credit card but you have to take responsibility for that room. If your family relationships are just in the dumps and everybody seems to constantly be pointing out how abrasive you are at family reunions, maybe if everyone's saying it, you're probably not managing that room. So, this isn't, once again, it's not the answer for everything. This is not an all-encompassing explanation. This is my attempt to wake you up and to get you to realize that it starts first with taking responsibility, taking ownership. That's the right word. Ownership. Because you have the key, you have to take ownership. Otherwise, you're going to abuse, or other people are going to abuse the access to those rooms. I'm running short on time, so I can't even really talk about when people decide to break into those rooms without the key, because that's a thing. Even if you have the key and you're responsible for the room, what happens when the door has been kicked off of its hinges, right? Because now everything's exposed. It's not safe. Yeah, you still have the key, but the door is broken. How do you fix that access point? How do you heal? How do you recover? That's something that I look forward to exploring in season 2. All right, because that's our time for today. I don't want to ramble on for too long, but I hope you enjoyed this uncut version. It's a bit of a new flavor, especially ending with something like keys. You know, I think it's a little symbolic because we're going from one room of season 1 to the next room of season 2, and yeah. Keys are something that we use all the time, but then we forget about until we need them again. It's a mundane thing, but its lessons forever remain. I didn't know how to connect the two. All right, let me just, since it's the last episode, I'd like to just do it how I usually do it, right? No gimmicks, just straight up. Though they be mundane, their lessons forever remain. My name is Jason, or you can call me Jace, and I, from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to thank you for not just watching, but hopefully taking part in season 1 of LFTM, or Lessons from the Mundane. I hope that not only through this, but subsequent or following seasons, that you'll continue to grant me the immense privilege and honor of speaking favor and fulfillment into your life. Not just to benefit you, by the way, but for all those people that are depending on you to grow. Yeah, that's a thing. Whether you think highly of yourself or not, some people notice you, and they're watching you. Not in a creepy way. So, I'll be taking a break for 1 week, and then we'll be promptly 2 Mondays from now starting back up with season 2 of Lessons from the Mundane by Jason. So naturally, once again, that means in 2 weeks, I'll be seeing you. Take care, guys.
That magical word, my friends, is struggle. I'm talking about food flow. Today, our pièce de résistance is the humble.
Walking to find as the fact is process of losing something or someone.
In the last video, I don't think I did a good enough job of tackling the different kinds of loss and their effects on us. So this is what we'll be talking about today. So this week, our mundane focus is the mighty grocery list. Words are like keys. If you choose them right, they can open any heart. or sustain that favor and fulfillment into your life. Not just to benefit you, by the way, but for all those people that are depending on you to grow.